take over, or you can stay if you'd like. Oh, we may have participants. Let's see.
Yeah, it says 5.
There's an attendee there.
Hi,
Kevin Fair.
Kevin. So we'll talk to him later we'll ask him if he has anything to say at certain points. So, all right, are we going live?
You are live.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, having a quorum, calling the meeting to order at 3:34. This is a virtual Zoom meeting and may be watched, and people may participate at the meeting remotely with a meeting link located on the Town of Southborough's website. I don't have to read the whole thing anymore, but the meeting's been called to order, and the first thing on our agenda is the Chestnut Hill Farm Management Plan. So the Open Space Preservation Commission reviewed this in great detail, line by line. We determined which items we felt were relevant to our work, and we made comments on those items, mostly to do with trails and wildlife habitat. I wrote a draft letter, which I kept as draft because we didn't review it afterwards. So I want to make it finalized tonight, if that's all right. So Karen, if you're able to share your screen and bring it up.
I am. Just one moment here. I'm just still trying to get the agenda.
And I haven't given you permissions yet. Let me do that.
Okay, great.
I want to mention that Kevin is in the audience, and he doesn't need to be elevated, but he is the newest member of the Conservation Commission. So it's welcome to the Conservation Commission, Kevin. And if after we go through this plan, you have any comments, I'll ask you if you want to say anything. But first, we'll go through our comments, and thank you for coming, Kevin. As soon as Karen gets it up on the screen.
Yeah, sorry for the delay. I'm trying to open up. Oh, here we go.
So the point is, we're not going to look at the management plan. This management plan was developed by reading, our comment letter on the management plan was developed by going through the management plan submitted by the trustees and then checking in with the conservation restriction to see what was required in the CR.
So I believe we now have.
Okay.
See it up on the screen here?
Yeah. So I'm going to move I have to move us up top so I can read this. So our first point was that it's only for the 108.91 acres that's under the conservation restriction held by the town. And that should be referenced on page 2, we recommended. Because throughout the plan, other parcels of land that are also owned by the trustees are referenced, and it gets confusing, because in our discussions, we felt that the management plan is only on what's under the town's CR. And if they want to include actions being done on other land they own, I don't think we're against that, but it needs to be clearly identified that it doesn't, it's not part of this management plan for the town-owned CR. So that was the first. Then we went into the livestock and grassland practices. This was one of the bigger concerns we had. It said, and I added in, we had discussed this at a meeting, and I added it in on how important wildlife habitat for bobolinks is. It's one of the fastest declining species, type of habitat and species in the states. They're called SWAP, the State Wildlife Action Plan, and it's listed of a species of greatest conservation need, as well as the habitat is listed of its greatest conservation need. And it also states that active agricultural land has a negative impact on the breeding of these birds. So we know that the core value of the CR, one of the purposes was protecting wildlife habitat, and that property before the CR, the town purchased this.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the recording just started now for anyone coming in a little later or watching at home. We're going through the conservation restriction management plan for Chestnut Hill Farm and the Open Space Preservation Commission's comments. So if you scroll down a little bit, Karen, to the second page. So this is talking about, so first we discussed why the bobolinks and the bobolink habitat is important to protect, and it's there on the property, and it and then we had concerns and confusion over what this sentence said, which is pasture management practices include a rotational grazing program, which allows grassland nesting birds to utilize the fields as breeding habitat seasonally. So approximately 10 acres managed to support grassland breeding birds. These acres are not grazed from May 31st to July 15th. That's typical what you require to keep the habitat there for the birds to breed, because the babies are on the ground. But then it goes on to say they're going to actually, they're trialing models of pasture management with rotational grazing, and they anticipate using this approach. Well, first they think this approach will work while the birds are breeding there, and they're saying they're going to use it, and that's just not acceptable. They don't know that it will work. So we made the recommendation that for the management plan, that they take out everything in the italics that was copied from their management plan. Is that ringing a bell with everyone? So just keep what they're going to manage it the way that we know works to protect the ground nesting birds. And then, you know, in the future, if their trailing models prove successful, come back in a future management plan with that evidence. But you don't just, you know, this one paragraph says two things contradicting each other. One, they're going to restrict grazing in that area before the 15th, and then the next one, well, they're going to try something new. So they're, as we determine its viability, that's not an acceptable wildlife habitat management. We're going to decide if it works. So then if you have comments on that, Karen or Sarah? It's what we already discussed. It's just you're seeing it in the draft form of the letter.
No
Okay.
comments.
So then recreation, that was the next issue we discussed, was the trails. Someone have a bird?
It's just the bird outside. I'll mute until I have to talk.
No, that's fun.
They're loud.
That's wonderful.
You hear us talking about them.
So in this sentence, in this area, there's an assumption made that, or a statement made that an agreement was made that the CR intended to provide access to 1.7 miles of trail. And I was involved when we were creating the CR, and the trails that were in the quote missing document are no longer there, and it would have made it more than the 1.7. So I have no idea, and none of us know. We're asking who made this agreement? When was that decided? So it goes into that situation. And if you, so we believed, based on my knowledge, which I shared with you, there was more than 1.7 miles. And, you know, when did that change? And then we also talked about so we wanted that stricken. And then if you go down to where it says Exhibit D, up, you went a little too far, Karen. So I'm not sure what page this is. It's like the second paragraph at the top of the page. Wrong page.
Next. Nope, go down,
Down. You just went
Page
scroll
3.
too far.
right there.
These should be numbered. Oh, it's numbered on the side. So page 3. Yeah.
I see,
So-
yeah, I see it now.
Exhibit D.
Second paragraph.
Exhibit D
Uh,
mentioned above. Yep.
So we were okay that that trail isn't in the plan if they feel it impacts their ability to do the agricultural use of the property. However, that came out to a portion of the property with a scenic view that they don't have access to now. So we would like that access. It's a little bit further up the hillside than where they come out onto that. I don't know if you're familiar, when you walk in the trails and you go into all the woodlands, and then you come out and you look over the whole scenic view. The real scenic view is a little further up the hill. And you know, the old trail that had been there, you could get up there, but now you can't. So we'd like to see that put back in without the whole trail that used to go down across the agricultural fields. It's just a little overlook. And the other big issue is on that map, they list a Bobbling Trail. It's also on a trail map in the public parking area. And I spent 2 visits trying to find that trail. And it's non-existent in most areas. And even when you could find an area that had been mowed, there was old farm fencing to trip on and shrubs and everything. I actually met another couple who was trying to walk it, and I thought they had found it until they came around the corner. They went one way, I went a different way from the parking lot, and I said, oh, they must have found it because I couldn't see them. And the next thing I know, they came around the corner and they said, yeah, they couldn't find it either. So if you're having a trail, it needs to be a trail. So, and then public access to premises outside farmstead. Well, let me step back. Is this familiar to you when we discussed it before? Do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, so I have side by side the minutes from our last meeting and your letter, just because we're going to have to approve the minutes later. And this is very much in line with what we talked about, Freddie.
Yeah, I know it's in line. The minutes, though, are not a transcript. So I had some notes that may not have been in there. So I just wanted to be sure.
Sure. Yeah.
We're just all on the same. And
Yeah,
also I
sure,
did
it looks
do
very accurate.
the site walk. I spent several hours there. And here's note to self, don't go try finding a trail that's not built when you're
Yeah.
right after
thank you for putting
church.
that time in. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I ended up in a sticky burr field. Anyhow, the next one was this concern about the November to March, where in the CR, we have permission to travel anywhere on the property with adequate snow cover. So we can snowshoe, sled, cross-country ski. But it says, there's another one of those contradictory comments in here where it says, for the safety of visitors and livestock, the enclosed areas with livestock will not be available for public use. So there should be no areas with livestock during our time for complete access. And elsewhere in the document, they said the livestock would be, moved somewhere else. So in the hoop barn in the farmyard. So if the livestock's not there, why is this contradictory language in there about having no access in those meadows when the livestock's there? Because the only time we go into those fields is when there's snow cover. And when there's snow cover, there should be no animals in there. And if they're saying they need to put the livestock in those fields during snow cover, that needs to be better defined. The trail maps, we asked for the color coding to be better. And also the map it shows one stone wall when there's actually two stone walls that are parallel. And I believe, can't be sure because there's no trail, but I believe the intention is for the trail to go in between the two stone walls. So they both should be shown on the map. If you go down to page 4. I think maybe it was page 3, one page up. Okay. We thought Appendix A should only include the property under the town CR. So they're including, so the land to the north of the MWRA aqueduct needs to be identified. That's under a conservation restriction from Sudbury Valley trustees. So any trails there are great to have and that we can use them, very wonderful, but it's not part of this management plan. Also the trails on the west side. And we thought there should be signage for the trail. Trail maintenance, that's about that's just more about the trails are required to be maintained and they're not. And it's, as it's marked on the board, it needs to be, when people come to the public parking area, they see that trail, like I saw that couple trying to find it, and it's not available. And we also discussed having a winter map, because I had been there, one of the days I was there was under snow cover during the ability to use the property at any time. And when you left the parking lot, there was no way to know how you could get into any of the publicly accessible. And they're also one of the big PR points we used when we were promoting the property for people to spend over $5 million in taxpayer money was the sledding hill. And I think it would be wise to have that identified so people know there's a sledding hill there, and to make sure that there's access to it, and also clearly marking how you get from one section of the fenced in meadows or grazing fields to the next one. If you're snowshoeing, you don't want to go all the way across a field and be in a dead end if there's no opening there. It really needs to be a trail map for the winter. We discussed that, correct?
Correct.
Nodding heads.
Yes, we did discuss.
Okay. So that was a winter map, signage, and then public access parking. That was a concern because it's a designated lot for public parking. And we were told it's supposed to be for 10 cars. It can hold way more than 10 cars, but we were told that's because a school bus might come in full of kids on a field trip and they need to be able to turn around. But it shouldn't be for backup parking for events. And as we looked at the management plan, it seems like there's a lot of events happening. And if you have a public parking area that is full of people, paid visitors for events, it's not public parking for the residents of Southborough or other people, because we're not just for Southborough, but a concern is for our residents, citizens that paid a lot of their tax money for this. They need to be able to have a space there to use the property without having to be paying to go to some other event. And one of the issues was the back side of the fencing. I don't know if it was always there. There's the split rail fence. I recall that it was, but I don't have pictures, so I can't be 100% sure. It needs to be there because right now it looks like it's a trail going over to the paid non-public activities. So we think there should be signage and also restriction on or a plan, because this is a plan, right?
Mhm.
If you're having an event and you have parking for, 20 cars, I don't know what their parking area is on their section. They should only be able to have events large enough that they have parking for, or make off-site parking arrangements. I don't think expecting the town's public parking to be used for that use is valid, and I think we all agreed to that because it's in here.
Mhm. Mhm.
I keep saying it's we, because I didn't put
I know it
anything
is,
in here.
we
We didn't
discussed it in our last meeting on that, where we discussed it in our last meeting.
Yeah, we went through it. I'm just recapping it because you see this says draft. I would like to get there's some typos I'd like to fix. I'd have to go find them, but aside from that, I would want your approval today that we're going to send this letter as a final statement from us. And then if you go to the last page, the additional item,
My cursor's lost here. Here we go.
lighting. So this happened, I thought it was a fluke. I was there one night and the CSA parking lot had lights on, and the lights, they're very understated. It's not big, bright used car lot lighting, but there's still lights. And then there's pathway lights. I happened to drive by there Monday evening and the lights were on. There's nothing happening. And we all know, even if it's a little bit of light, it is harming our insects. A little bit of light is enough light to make it so that the lightning bugs can't find mates. And, there's no need to have lights on when there's nobody using the property. So I think that needs to be.
It's bad for the environment. It's also a waste of energy.
Well, they could be solar lights. I don't know, but for the, I thought it is a waste of energy. It could be, but I really think the environmental, it harms birds and insects, and no need to be on. So they need to figure out how to fix that. So, and I should sign this Freddie Gillespie chair on behalf of the Open Space Preservation
Yeah.
Commission. Shouldn't just be me. But when I sign this, everything in here we had discussed, but we hadn't all reviewed the letter. That's why I put the draft on it.
Yep.
And if you have any comments on this, or you can make a motion to finalize it, or if you want to make any edits.
I'm happy to make a motion to finalize the draft letter presented with the small edits we discussed, like you mentioned, a typo and, adding on behalf of to the letter.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Karen,
In favor?
Sarah,
Sarah in favor.
Freddie Gillespie in favor. So that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And I'll clean it up and send it on to the, well, actually, before we move off of this topic, Kevin is there. Kevin, can you unmute? Did you want to say anything about this or not? You don't have to. You may not even be in the room.
No, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
That was
here
pretty
if you can hear
funny.
me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
No, I'm just trying to get up to speed with my new Concom responsibilities. So I saw Chestnut Hill, and it's good to see, how these letters are created. And I thank you for all the hard work.
So you're welcome, Kevin. I would recommend that what we did is we went through the plan line by line, and we also reviewed the conservation restriction that the plan is supposed to be supporting. And but we didn't review everything in the plan because we took a narrow approach, although because it's a conservation restriction, we probably could have, but we felt that the trails, the wildlife habitat were the main areas of concern for our commission. And that's what we focused on, and still came up with a 5-page letter. So, all right, so we can go on to the next agenda item, and I hope you'll stay for all as you find it interesting. The next agenda item is Stonebrook Village. Open space mitigation plan for open space encroachment. Karen, did you get a copy of that? It was sent to that other email.
I did.
If you can bring it up, and I'll go over this. Stonebrook Village.
Just saving the first one so that we can attach it to our minutes. And let me bring up the second one.
Okay, and I'll just go over what this is. Stonebrook Village is this over 55 condo on Oregon Road. And there was a subdivision, so they had to include 10% of open space.
Is the right document showing right now?
No, that's the minutes, I think.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, that's the agenda.
Sorry, I have all these documents open and it's hard to tell when you look at the little minutes.
If it's easier, I can share it.
Decision, Stonebrook. Is this it here?
Nope.
No, I don't understand what's not.
Sarah, you have it? Is it easier for Sarah to put it up if she has permission to share?
Is it the maps, the pictures?
It is.
Yeah, I have that up.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you share it then, Sarah, if you've got it available to you?
So what happened here was, again, it was a 10% open space, you know, those narrow strips.
Mhm.
And there were several areas where, and if you scroll down a little bit, that's one blue area. They're adding that into the open space. And if you go to the next one, and then we can scroll up again. Is it all in the same? Yeah. So what happened was, during the building of the project, the buildings, there were some encroachments into the open space with decks having like stairways going down, the posts going into the open space. These were small, but it was gratifying that the planning board, when they did their inspection, called it out, and it wasn't just, oh, it's not that bad. And what happened is the project proponent went back and saw where they could add some land back to the open space easement. So it's got to be a whole plan redrawn, because what's on file will have to be replaced with a new plan showing where the open space easement is. So here you're seeing this picture here has most of the encroachments, the yellow, which they're calling reduction. So, and then they added some land in. And if you go back up to the top page, it seems most of the additional land was added in the first page. So 843 square feet. And if you scroll down just a little bit, it will show you overall that it's almost it's over 3 to 1, right? 260 is about what was encroached on, and they're giving us 909 square feet. I shouldn't say giving, they're replacing it with more open space than was. So they need our saying it was acceptable. I had a conversation with the town planner that, you know, we're just looking at this. Did somebody do the math? And somebody made sure it all is within the easements and going to be on the big plan that gets filed. And, you know, the planning department will take care of that. So I'm comfortable that looking at these maps, that these numbers are correct, and that I wouldn't say no to getting 3 times as much open space as what was encroached upon.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Saying that, it's, you know, one of those projects again where we got those narrow little strips of the, you know, I won't say more, but narrow little strips that are very easily encroached upon. And not providing as much habitat value, but at least we're getting notice and taking seriously that these encroachments matter, so that when there's a bigger one, things will be done properly, which is really rewarding. So I'd like to thank the planning board for for bringing this to their attention, and to Capital Group for being responsive to fixing the issue. It certainly wasn't intentional on their part. And if there's a motion to accept this, I can write that recommendation to them. The next phase is there was a requirement for some winterberry native plantings to go into the property, as well as invasive species removal. So once they get this approved, there will be an as-built plan, and we will be able to go out and take a look and make sure that the plantings, the native species got planted and the invasives got removed. But that's the next step. So is there a motion to approve?
Yeah,
this?
I can make a motion to accept the letter as drafted.
There's no letter drafted.
Or not letter, sorry, the picture, the
Approve the, what is it called?
Adjustment plan?
Yeah.
proposed?
Yeah. And so can somebody say that again and make,
So I can make a motion to approve the adjustment plan that we just reviewed.
is there a second?
I second.
And I'll take a roll call. Sarah,
Sarah Rustano in favor.
Karen,
Pitch in favor.
Freddie Gillespie in favor. That passes unanimously. Thank you. I realize I have to figure out, I think there's something else to say besides all in favor, because that's assuming you're all in favor. And that's why I said roll call. All right, so the next agenda item is,
The Pollinator Preservation Garden.
yeah. Oh boy. Somehow I'm in a weird thing. Good. Oh, people are texting me while I'm trying to look up a picture. At the Beals Preserve. So that is an open space preservation commission project in collaboration with the Southborough Open Land Foundation. And this is just an update. We need to have a work day planned the end of May, probably beginning of June. The Southborough Open Land Foundation purchased some plants, which should be arrived. So depending on when they arrive, the end of May, early June. We also had a donation of a water cube. If you're familiar with the one at Breakneck Hill, one of our volunteers through the Native Plant Gardens of Southborough, he's actually from Northborough, was able to get one of those water cubes. He set it up for us. This is Gary Phillips. I don't know, you may have met him.
Sorry, just for the notes here, Freddie, did you say water cube or tube?
Cube, C-U-B-E. It holds about 300 gallons.
Perfect.
And it's on pallets. He brought it over, he set it up, he put a valve in so that we can run a hose off it. And Whit Beals has filled it up with water. So when the plants arrived, we're good to go for water.
That's
And
great.
it's an ingenious solution when you don't have a spigot to turn on. If anyone remembers when we were planting in Breakneck Hill on Wildflower Hill, and somebody brought water.
5-gallon buckets of water.
Somebody
Yep.
said, oh, I'll put it in a cooler in my car, until the cooler tipped over, and thought that wasn't a good idea. And then they said, oh, I'll put a cooler full of ice. And I'm thinking, that's not a good idea, except for it was so hot, it melted by the time we got it up to the top of the hill. So then we got the cube, and it made life a little bit easier. We still had to carry it up the hill, but I think Kat had one of those, tag-along carts, those folding carts, like a wagon that you can pull uphill. Anyhow, having this cube, and I'm mentioning it because if you're ever doing another project, you want to find a way to get one of these cubes. So that's the next step. We're looking for volunteers to do that. And mentioning that, anyone watching at home, or for Sarah and Karen, this is a stewardship committee activity, but if you want to come by on Saturday morning, we're doing weeding at the Ecology Research Garden, 8:30 to 9. Show up, and we'll get in, do some weeding, and get out, because it's going to be a hot morning. Hot. So anyone is welcome to join us at the Ecology Research Garden, which is behind the community gardens on Breakneck Hill Road, Breakneck Hill Conservation Land. All right. Kevin, you're invited too. Next agenda item. Oh, this is interesting. 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods. Karen, can you bring up the recommendations, the decision? I sent that out.
Foods, yeah.
So what happened for this is, this has been going on for quite a while. There was a requirement from a past. Let me get the story straight. There was a modification to a plan in the past, and that modification required a wildflower meadow. And the reason was it was mitigation, because the modification was because the project hadn't been built as required in the prior decision. So we were able to say, well, why don't we ask for this? And it was accepted. And it was about 30, I forget the exact number, about 3,500 square feet of a wildflower meadow. And I never noticed a wildflower meadow driving by, but we did what we could do back when we were in the permitting phase. Well, now they're coming back with a expansion, and they're putting a new building addition right on top of where the wildflower meadow was supposed to be. And prior to going to some of the hearings and writing our comment letter, we had proponents from Ken's attend, right? Scott Doughty, Bill Pizzoni. We had several meetings where we had representatives from there. We had permission. I went out. I also went with town planner and planning board member Mimi Luttrell, and we did a site walk, and we had seen that the meadow really hadn't been established. Whatever happened, it was a failure. There was a few plants, and it was mostly non-native clover growing where the meadow should have been implemented. So we now have a project with a replacement meadow outside of where the building's going, and we made our recommendations. And this is the proposed decision. Based on our comments, some of the decision items reflect our recommendations. So I highlighted them a little bit. This just came from Karina from the town planner today. I think it was today. So if you scroll down, some of the highlights are hers. I tried to use green. So if we scroll through this, this is from the planning department, the whole history of the review. And then this first one, number 3, is just saying why. So that was in 2017 that there was the project that the 2019 modification required the meadow. And then just keep going down. So this is sort of the history of it. And now in this one, so the wildflower meadow on the east side, and there were also additional missing plantings. So this decision includes methods to rectify that, right? So keep going down. And you'll come to green, I think. Okay, so the proposed or disturbed grass. Oh, this is something I need a little help with. Number 9, we had talked about, and we always talk about there's no need to add more lawn if there's already, unless there's a lawn needed in that area, right? So we don't say no lawn ever, but we always say, if it's not a picnic area or part of a front yard, we recommend a lawn alternative. And there are some areas here where we asked for, and they are not willing to give up any of the large lawn area from Route 9 in front of the building. But there is some other small areas around the parking lot. It's not a big sight view for their lawn vision, and they agreed to do that. We still have to determine exactly where that is. So that got in there, so it's good, but it's not specific. And I want your permission for me to go through the plan with the town planner and make those recommendations and working with the project proponent to make sure we're in agreement where those are going. So it got confusing because there are so many plans. I really couldn't figure out which was the current landscape plan. So sort of, if you're looking at the building from Route 9, it's on the right-hand side mostly, where they're putting in the new building and they're disturbing the soil. So when they're going to replant the soil, there's no need for a lawn over where where the cars are parking. So number 10, this is our recommendation for the meadow be created with not 100% of Dr. G. Gear's plants, because you need a healthy ecosystem, but with a majority of them. And we are working with the town planner, and we get to consult with the planner to create that seed mix when it gets ready for it. It also talks about the 3 years. And invasives removed as needed after it's established. And the next issue, so this is a little vague. OSPC recommends the shrubs planted. I want your permission for me to go through and make a recommendation. Karen, can you leave that up and bring something else up as well, or do you have to take it down? You're muted.
I can bring up more than one thing if I share my screen instead of sharing the document. It just makes each of them smaller. What's the other thing you wanted up?
I sent you a link to Dr. G. Gear's plant list.
Yeah. Let's see.
So what happened is, the way the landscape plan was, I was looking at one area and it didn't have any plants from his list. And then the proponent at the planning board meeting said, oh, they had lots of plants from his shrubs from his list in another area. And I still haven't found that yet. So what I want to do is just quickly go through Dr. G. Gear's list.
I've got it here. Let me see, just pulling up. Beautiful list. I'm going to put this here side by side. I'm just trying to make this. Okay, we'll see how this looks. I don't know if you can see it big enough.
Okay. So Dr. G. Gear's list on the far right, that is, can you scroll it all? So if you look, so this first one here, these are the, slow down. These are the pollen sources, right? And you'll see there's a lot of shrubs. So we're just talking about shrubs now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look next to it, it says sun and soil. Well, these are all going to be full sun, basically, or part sun, because they'll get planted in under trees and other shrubs. But we want ones that are wet or medium and soil type. So I'll go through here. Like, so there's a whole bunch of roses, but that's a very wet meadow or wetlands or wetland buffer. So the swamp rose makes sense, right? All of the willows, except for this one that likes it dry, which is the the Bebby willow. So, we wouldn't recommend that one, but, pussy willow, and then maybe some of the others. We want to have, if you see the green over here, the months, the bloom time, we're trying to get blooming all months, so March, April, May. And I would recommend, so we can't do it right now, but taking plants from this list and recommending they use those shrubs that include ones that are wet. And if you could scroll down a bit, there's some other shrubs in the other sections too. So anywhere on this list, if you go further a little bit down, like high bush blueberry they love wet, and will do well there. So any of these plants that are shrubs that can work, and offer those up is the recommendation from the commission, if that works for you guys.
Yeah. Every time I look at this list, I'm so impressed with how helpful it is. It has so much, it's just loaded with information.
And for anyone who may be watching, I think it's important to know that this list was created based on research from Dr. Robert G. Gere from two sources of information. One is his own research and surveys on several sites throughout the state, across the state, and the other is from a citizen science project. But when we're talking about the research, Breakneck Hill Conservation Land in Southborough was his first research site. And volunteers from Southborough were the first trained citizen science working on his project before he even had the citizen app up, Beecology. So this list is existing in large part because of the effort of the wonderful volunteers here in Southborough and the hard work. And a lot of this was promoted and facilitated by the Open Space Preservation Commission, the Stewardship Committee, and the volunteers from the Native Plant Gardens of Southborough Facebook group. So it's something to be proud of. You go to Framingham, their Conservation Commission, if somebody comes to them, they hand them this list. These are the plants to use. This is what we want you to use. It's the recommended plant list. So, and that's happening in more places across the state. So the seed list will also come from here for the majority of the seeds. And we want as many of these plants as possible in any plantings on projects we get to weigh in on, because these are actually, we have evidence that they're helping species from going extinct, and, important work. And I'm proud of the work this commission has done to make this happen.
Yeah.
So recommending it on a planting scheme just makes sense. So you can take that away. If I have permission, you can make, does that need to be a motion? I don't know. Maybe it does. Can you bring up the decision back again, Karen? I didn't mean for you to delete that.
No, it's all right.
Um,
Can you see it now?
yeah. So on this number 10, the seed mix, that's approved by town planner. So that's anyone watching, that's from that list, plants from there. And the shrubs from his list, we're going to ask you to give permission that I list specific ones from that list. And then, is that all right? Do I need a motion there?
If you want me to make a motion, I'm happy to do so.
I don't know if it needs a motion. If you're both okay with it, Sarah, can you say yes? And I'll just add it says Dr. G. Gere's list. I just want to be a little more specific.
Yeah, I don't think,
Okay.
doesn't seem to need one.
But then number 11, and this was what we discussed, because we're putting a meadow in at Breakneck Hill, working with a meadow expert who is also working on using as many of Dr. G. Gere's plants as possible. We have a price of what it costs to establish a meadow, and it turns out it's almost the same exact square footage. It's around 34,000 square feet. So the price of putting that meadow in should be, every garden is different, every meadow is different, but it should be in line. And we use that as a recommendation for a bond because the last meadow was never properly installed. So the town putting a bond on it sort of ensures that they're going to get it right this time. And everyone was in agreement with that. But the problem we still haven't discussed, not a problem, but a thing I realized when I'm reading this decision, is it doesn't say when they get the funding back. And one of the concerns is what other, like normally, the building gets finalized and they get their occupancy permit, and that's sort of when everything gets done. Well, this is going to be, they think the building's only like an 8-month build out. So we're 2 years after that. So we need to be clear when the money gets released. So I want to make it so to be released after the meadow is fully established.
Minimum
is-
of 3 years. Yep. Minimum of year 3. Yep.
Is that all right for
think that
me,
sounds
for us
okay.
to make that? That's a recommendation that, if they have to. And again, we only make recommendations to the planning board, and the planning board also listens to the proponent and to other entities. Oh, and also with the shrubs we're adding in, the existing shrub list, some of it may have been approved by the Concom, but I've heard if it's agreeable, it's not a big deal to do the replacement. So, and then if you scroll down further, I think that's the end of the green, but let's just double check. Oh, no, here we go. This is a question I have. Scroll up a little bit. So when I went out there looking at our meadow, there was also some other plantings that hadn't survived. Can you just go to the box, start where this green paragraph starts on the page above? Right there. So there were some wetland plantings that hadn't quite made it, and they have but now they have a new plan and a new revised set of plans, and they're going to replace plantings, and that will be monitored through 2 full growing seasons with reports provided. So that's wonderful. But then I read this here at the bottom. It says, upon the proven success of the plantings with at least a 90% survival rate, the applicant may request a certificate of completion of these plantings. Right? So my question is, I never heard of this before. Why a 90% success rate? If you put plantings on the plan, shouldn't they all make it? Unless maybe you bumped up the number of plants to 110%, of which 90% is 99% of them would have made it, which is, in my way of thinking, you're close to what you wanted to be there. But why would you say 90% is okay? Be like, I'm building a building, but I'm only have to build 90% of it and get my, completion permits. I don't know the answer to that, why, but I'd like to ask it and suggest that they add. And then also question was, who decides if it's 90%? Are they counting it by shrub, or what if it's a tree and the tree's more, value or higher mass than a shrub? What determines 90% and who's making that decision? So I'd like to suggest adding more shrubs to make this requirement reasonable, and that those shrubs can be shrubs or trees can be from Dr. Jagir's list. And maybe there's a reasonable, they'll say, no, that's a standard practice. I'm not sure. But any opinions?
I honestly don't know. I don't feel informed to have an opinion about this specific piece.
So what I'm asking for is to ask the question, why 90%? Is it a standard a standard rate. I've read a lot of decisions. I've never seen it before. So
Mhm.
why? And if it's not, what,
Yeah, why 90 over
100?
85, 95, 100? Well, I'm guessing because they're living plants and things, I guess, could go wrong, but
Normally, if
then,
it goes wrong, then you replant that one.
yeah.
So maybe that's what they're saying. You can get a certificate of completion.
I mean, it sounds to me like they're just trying to give themselves a little bit of leeway, and and perhaps because they have this historically failed project that they're feeling nervous. I'm not sure.
Well, normally what happens is they go back, you have 5 dead trees. Okay, we plant those trees. And then when those are surviving, you get your certificate.
Mm.
And that's a process I'm more familiar with. And again, I'm not a planning board member, but I just think asking the question why, and then it seems to me, if it's to give them a buffer so they can get their certificate, well, then let's ask them to add more plants than are on the plan now, so that if 10% of it fails, we're still at a
100, yeah.
reasonable amount of plants that should be on the plan.
And why does it say they're saying throughout 2 full growing seasons? But didn't you suggest 3, the bond?
Yeah, the bond. So this is not for our meadow. This is for other plantings. They had other plantings on the project that failed.
Oh, okay.
And this here is for those other, I think it's for plantings elsewhere.
Wetland replication plantings.
Right.
Right.
And Freddie, just so you know, Mimi is also with us as well as an attendee right now,
Okay.
along with Kevin.
Thank
Mimi.
you, Karen. So I think asking the question and then seeing like the 2 years, I think that's standard because it, for a tree and a shrub. Meadows are different because you have to do the soil prep for a whole season or 2. 1 to 2 seasons of soil prep, then you seed, then you need a whole season of this intermittent mowing to allow the natives to establish and weaken the weed pressure that will surely pop up. So, do you agree that we should ask the question and then make a suggestion that they add more shrubs in? If there's not a good answer, that they add more shrubs in.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to add more shrubs in anyhow and add more of Dr. G. Gear's plants.
It's just good for us to understand why they chose what they chose, and if it doesn't make sense to us, yeah, then I agree they should add more shrubs.
And if I hate when they don't put your name there because I'm like, who from the town of Southborough was that? Colleen, are you still with us?
I don't think.
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, she is. Ah,
I wasn't sure if we need you to elevate Mimi, we can ask her if she wants to weigh in on that, if she has any idea.
she can talk. I'm also happy to elevate her.
Oh, you can do it? Okay. Sorry, Colleen.
That's okay.
Can you elevate her, Karen? And we can ask
I
if she
just
has
did.
any knowledge because she's here and she's on
It
the
looks
planning
like she's
board.
already able to because she popped up on my view.
Yeah.
She's not on my view. I have to go over, sorry.
I just changed her to a panelist. She's here with us now.
Hi, Mimi. Can you unmute and you can say you don't know or
Here she is.
put her on the
Hi.
spot? Hi.
On the 90%?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Have you ever heard of that before?
No. And I'm wondering, because it's the wetlands replication, I wonder if it's being transferred over from conditions of the Concom, but that can be asked on Monday.
So we will ask, and I don't think it hurts to add. So what we're asking for is, we'll then put in 10% more shrubs.
Sure.
If you think you're going to have a 10% failure, but is this anything that the planning board, does this impact anything of the planning board? Because our recommendations are not to the Conservation Commission, which I think is done.
Well, if it's only in the wetlands replication area, that's not us, but they still haven't complied with the previous plan in that detention area that Freddie, you and I and Karina went and saw a couple of times that had either dead plants or they weren't planted there. So that still hasn't been brought into compliance, but Scott's saying they're putting a whole bunch of other plants in the depressed area where there was standing water.
Right.
But that, I mean, okay, so what happens to the previous approved plan? So,
Well, if we get 10% of the wetland replication area added, you know, it doesn't have to go over in the wetland replication area if that's an approved plan from the Conservation Commission.
yeah,
And there may be valid reason why the Conservation Commission accepted 90% because maybe they had them overly fill it. I don't know.
So I
Overly fill it is not
just
nice.
added to the minutes, that we're going to make a question about why 90%. And if we don't agree with the reason, that we'll suggest planting more. Does that accurately reflect our conversation?
Actually, I would suggest that whether we agree with it or not, that we recommend.
Okay.
Unless the reason is that they already gave them an extra 10%, right?
So it does depend on the answer then, in terms of whether or not we recommend the bushes. Is that right?
The only reason that would be acceptable if they already bumped up the number of plants to 10% more than what is needed to adequately create a wetland mitigation area. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
I'm sure there's other reasons that could be. I guess my point is it doesn't hurt to ask for the extra 10% one way or the other,
Doesn't.
whatever.
Nope, made a note of that in the minutes.
Okay. So then you want to scroll down? Is there anything else here? Oh, what's this one? Okay, that's a 90%.
That's it.
Those were the only ones I felt that related to our comments. So we can ask Kevin, who's sitting here, if he wanted to say anything about this, understanding he's already explained he's new to all of his role on the Conservation Commission.
I can bump Kevin over to us too as well, so we're all together here.
No, I just listening along. I guess I'll congratulate Mimi on her TBD chairmanship planning board there. And yeah, I was trying to look quickly for the Concom decision to see if the 90% was in there, but I was been unsuccessful so far. So,
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for looking. It's great to have
And
you for such things. Yeah.
we do know that the direction of the Planning Board and Conservation Commission is that they work closely together, so it's reasonable to expect that they're not siloed anymore, which is a good thing. So there could be a reasonable reason, but all right, so on to our next item, which is
All right, Earth Day concert garden tour reschedule recap Planet Palooza.
yeah, that's a mouthful.
Mm.
So we had canceled our Earth Day concert and garden tour. It's canceled or postponed, and we're hoping to replan it. I have to reach out again. I'm still trying to reach the concert singer and see if we can reschedule that. And then in June, and I've also heard, I shouldn't say I've heard, we've been asked, the library, this is the library Pollinator Preservation Garden, which is an open space preservation commission project in collaboration with the library. We have the AIMSA, that's the Advanced Math and Science Charter School in Marlborough, the Climate Change Committee. They are back again working, volunteering. We had a morning of weeding. We also had another day of weeding. When was that? A week ago. So we're trying to get that garden into shape. And shouldn't say trying, we're working to get it in. The plants seem to have, most of them seemed very successful. The regional pollinator preservation task force of the Metro West Conservation Alliance has asked if we would be in their garden tour for regionally for people to come. So it would seem wise to use the same day to have a garden tour regionally and for the Southborough residents to come and see that garden. Are you all right with us planning that in June on a date to be determined? I'm thinking like, do you have a day that's better for you? Or I know you guys are often very tied up. Thinking the last weekend in June, is that the 25th on a Saturday or that Sunday?
25th is Saturday.
And then, or Sunday, if we can get the, and if we can't get the, if the singer concert doesn't work out, we can always do that next year for Earth Day and have the garden tour anyhow.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Sounds good.
So I'm going to try to plan it when she can be there and, or plan it if she can't make a date, then we will just have the event. Is that all right?
Mhm.
Okay. What else? Planet Palooza, I think, was a pretty big success. Lots of activities. I gave a presentation at St. Mark's School. Dr. Jagir had a, for this time, I always want more, but I think there were close to 20 people at his presentation. What else? There was trail walks. I just heard good reviews, and it might be something we want to work with other groups to do next year. And then there was also the component that we were honoring Linda Hubley. Tonight is the South Broken Land Foundation's annual meeting, if anyone wants to go, but I think they had donated to her scholarship fund with a challenge, and I think that was successful. And you know why we like that idea is that it's funding scholarships for kids doing environmental studies. So a win-win, and honoring Linda is just amazing. What else was there? I think that's it. Next item.
Open space protection planning.
Right, so we haven't really been as focused on this lately because it's always on our agenda. There's a potential to maybe partner with SVT doing a workshop, so they would reach out to property owners in Southborough. It's not us partnering, but I would help. We would help give them a list of property owners who might be interested in going to the workshop. I was looking at our wildlife habitat report that had highest priority for, and that's only for wildlife habitat, but it captures a lot of most of the properties in town. And they were having a live event, but maybe because of COVID, they just didn't get the turnout that they expected, so they're postponing it to another date. So I think it's time for us to start looking at that again, like, you know, what outreach we need to do. There's some properties that could be coming more. The market's hot right now is what I'm thinking, the real estate market, and sometimes that's when properties come up for sale. So we want to be aware of that and maybe start planning for that. And we also have that on the master plan. We'll talk about that under the master plan agenda item, but you know, maybe creating a plan on actual acquisition of property and funding and how we're going to move forward on that would be a good idea. I don't have anything else on it right now, but we just haven't really been talking about it as much in the past maybe year. It's been, you know, nothing been on our agenda, but it doesn't mean we can't be planning again. We had been talking about it in the past, So any thoughts on how to move forward with that?
I don't have any.
Maybe review the list again and see which properties are sold or available or not available.
There was, I mean, it was brought up in some of the discussions and the questions around the master plan. Did we have a priority list, and where was the updated list around what we were focusing on? So I know
Right.
people that are thinking about that, you know, that.
So the issue with the priority, quote, priority list is we were working over many years ago on creating a priority list before this most recent open space and rec plan, when the state officials who review the open space and rec plan actually recommended you don't create a specific list, but rather criteria that you're looking for when you want to protect a property. And the reasoning for that is twofold. Is one, you never know if you have a list and there's 10 properties on it, and a property that's not on the list becomes available, do you pass on that because you're not going to protect these other properties that aren't available and in your lifetime never may become available?
Can it be a flexible list though? Can it be like a list that gets updated on a, regular basis or whatever, or can, is seen as a work in progress?
The issue is, well, there's two issues. And the second part is, if you put properties on the list, it creates maybe a focus for people to go out and purchase that property that don't want the town to get it, and or it pumps up the price of the property. There were valid reasons. I was surprised that they were
Interesting.
recommending
those are good
don't
points.
create
Yeah.
a list. And we have the wildlife habitat report, which I think we can look at which properties no longer should be on that.
Mhm.
And there may be a way of creating another list of other values, but I think we need to discuss it more, and maybe even have a conversation, bring Krista Collins in from SVT to discuss with us too. Could be valuable.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that, one of the things is you reach out to property owners to see if they want to donate a conservation restriction on their land is one way of that land gets protected. And that's, there's other methods of protecting land than just the town outright buying land. Putting CRs on them is one of the more affordable ways. Getting a donation is the most affordable way. And that's, we did this, I don't know if it was like 4 years ago with SVT. We had a luncheon at the community house and we invited property owners, and
I remember attending that with you. Yeah.
and they expressed why you can, there's tax breaks that give you value for making a donation, and you get to keep the land and use it with a CR the way the CR allows and get the tax donation. Or there's also ways for some property owners looking at estate planning. So they had a lawyer who did that. And I think that's what SVT is thinking of doing, this workshop. So I'll find out more about that, when it might be held. And we can talk about that, and then, other instruments of how we would protect land. So. All right, next is any other comments, or is there, if the other committee members want to work on a priority list, because we keep getting asked that, I think what we first of all should do is decide if we want to have one, and if not, be very clear why there isn't
a list. Yeah.
That we as a commission review the reasonings. I know what I was told, but it would be wise to revisit that.
Mm-hmm. I made a note of that in the minutes.
Master plan review. I will say Karen was out of the country, I think, when they had one of the meetings I attended.
That's right. Yeah. And I know that you've really put a lot of time, Freddie, which I really appreciate, into reviewing the drafts of the chapters and giving feedback to me and to Judith and Mimi. And my understanding is much of that feedback has been incorporated now into the latest review, but I'm happy to have Mimi here on this
Yeah.
call.
What I wanted to say was that we had gone through it, our implementation area line by line, and made recommendations, and most of those recommendations were accepted. There were a few differences of we didn't quite understand the timeline and the responsibilities. We had recommended that the Conservation Commission be responsible for some actions on invasives, I think it was mostly, and invasive species. And it turned out that that wasn't something the Conservation Commission wanted to take on. So rather than having it take off the plan, I agreed without everyone's buy-in, because there was no one to talk to at that moment, that we would keep it under our jurisdiction and we should discuss that again. We don't have to do it today. I think, do you know when the plan's going to be finalized?
I know there's a goal of it being finalized by the end of June. Has that changed at all, Mimi?
The plan is to have the joint select board, planning board meeting on June 6th. And at that point, hopefully the planning board would accept it.
So
We're open for comments until May 27th.
and it's the 18th. So what I'm going to say is that without the ability of the whole committee being able to vote on some of the changes I agreed to, or I unilaterally said to, we're okay. I'd like everyone to review what's there, and then if there's any dissent on what, basically everything we wanted was pretty much put in. I changed some of the timeline because it didn't meet the criteria they were looking for, and I accepted responsibility for the invasives. I think that's the main thing. And then there was one other component that I recommended be added, and it was graciously put in there. There were a lot of action items about setting criteria for land protection, but there was no create a plan for land protection. I forget the exact language, but it made sense that we should be, that should be the thing that we're working on, not just, it was like tasks that you would be doing as part of a bigger plan, and there was no line item to do the plan to protect land. So I wanted to make sure that was identified as a value that the town wants to protect land, right? So I want to have everyone review that, and I'll figure out a way that you can say if it's okay or not. And if we had to by, what did Mimi say, the 27th, which is about 9 days away,
Friday.
we could have a 10-minute meeting or something if we had to, if we had trouble finding another time to meet. So I don't think there's anything outrageous there, but I'm just a little, I never like to make decisions for a commission without the commission's input.
Well, maybe one last review, if you want to, from you, Sarah, because I've reviewed all of Freddie's comments and what's been incorporated, and I'm in agreement, but I don't know if you've had a chance to see all that.
So we send it out to everyone, and then it's a question of how we comment on it without open meeting law, because we can't, without a quorum. So I'll find out a way to see how we can do that. And maybe we have you send comments, Sarah, to the chair of the master plan committee. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out, right? Because we'd have to have a meeting to discuss it. And I don't think there's anything earth shattering there, but timing is everything on these things. So, all right, what was the next agenda item?
Partner with scholarship committee review.
scholarship, partner with scholarship committee review. I'm just going to stay on mute because they were doing mowing the lawn here and it's loud.
All right, that, I think I went over a little bit in the Planet Palooza. So we'll discuss that another meeting tape. I mean, I don't know the results. I haven't heard. And I think it was a successful event, I think. Shouldn't say event. It's a successful way of bringing attention to the scholarship through the Planet Palooza, and we can find out some information later, okay? And then library CPC application for the Pollinator Preservation Garden. I don't know if I talked about this before. We asked to it's in our minutes that we asked to withdraw it and the CPC agreed. So over the summer, I think we want to start working on what we want to go into that. You know, the plantings. We had a pretty robust plan from a native plant expert, but the whole commission should go over that before that's for fall town meeting. I don't even know when that's happening. Then the minutes. I had a couple of edits, Karen.
Okay, great. So we have 2 minutes that need to be,
Oh, I only had one that I reviewed. I'm sorry.
yeah, there's 2. So they were both attached to the same email. So the minutes for March 29th and the minutes for March 9th. Which were the ones that you had some edits already prepared for? We can look at those first.
Let me see if I can find it, because this is the March 9th.
March 9th. Okay, so let me bring that one up on the screen first here.
I'm looking at,
You should be able to see it now.
yeah, I'm looking at mine because I highlighted them. Under the Chestnut Hill Farm Management Plan,
Yeah.
fifth bullet down, we put a lot of resources into the CSA.
Yeah. Yeah.
That should say the town of Southborough spent over $5 million to purchase a conservation restriction. And tell me when you're done, I'll go to the next one.
Okay. The town of Southborough purchased a conservation restriction. And then do we get rid of the rest of the sentence here?
No. Let me go back to yours.
Can
To
you
purchase
see-
so take out, put a lot of resources into a CSA. This had nothing to do with a CSA. We spent it on a CR.
Okay.
So we need to get the full benefit of the trails.
Yep. Good. Okay.
Okay, wait a second. Under parking, it's a couple down from that. A couple bullets down.
Got it.
Parking for the, and then right, fencing or shrubbery needs to be added. We talked about putting a shrub in it.
Where do you want to say that? Parking for the public needs, clearly say. Where do we put in the bid about fencing and
At the end of the trustees,
Okay.
say, and fencing needs to be added around the entire lot, or shrubbery. Shouldn't be a trail going to, it's for the public access, right? Let me see if I can, what happened here. I need to get back to my screen. Under Earth Day, it should say OSPC to sponsor a concert with musician. not sure what it says there. That whole thing about stewardship, that was unrelated to what is.
So we
It's not
changed
open.
land addition.
Take all that out and just say OSPC will sponsor a concert. Earth Day concert, yeah. So I think you can take out seed library. Let's take that out. We will ask the CPC off to the fall to allow our application to be presented at fall town meeting. So take out
Off to the fall, right?
off to the fall, take that out. And you can take out, this will allow more time. It doesn't, to get the garden up and running. It's just, we asked that. I think pollination preservation garden at the Beals Preserve. This was in March. Planned to be planted this season is what we discussed. So does anyone want to make a motion to accept these? Does anyone else have any edits? Does anyone want to make a motion to accept these minutes as edited? You could say so moved.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from March 9th as edited.
Is there a second?
I can second the motion.
Roll call, Karen,
Karen approves.
Sarah,
Sarah Rosatano approves.
Freddie, Gillespie approves, passes, all in favor, unanimous. And then what were the next minutes, Karen?
Just 1 second, let me just save this changes.
29. March 29th.
Right. Okay, so the next one is the March 29 minutes. So let me just pull those up for you. And then we'll be all up to date here. Okay. Let's see now.
Okay. Okay, go up top. Well, this is all about the CR, so I don't know what that means. We're only concerned with the CR. I think you can just, these are not a, oh, we are, how about we are focusing on the wildlife habitat and trails of the CR. So if you can take that, unfortunately, on the next sentence, just take it out because this isn't a transcript. Well, or you could say, unfortunately, the land is fenced off and I couldn't see how to get into the areas. There was snow cover when I went to that.
You take it out or no? Yeah.
I don't care. It's just hard to edit it to make it what we discussed. Okay, so it says all the land the town has permission to access under snow cover was fenced off. And it was hard to see how to access it. I didn't see it, but I think it was open.
Yep.
Okay,
You still want to say under snow cover?
yeah, we only have access there under snow cover.
All the land that the town has permission to access under snow cover was fenced off. So after yeah.
Instead of we would like to dedicate this event in her honor, we decided to dedicate, I think we voted to, but we determined, or we decided to dedicate the event in her honor. I don't know what this means, so yeah, now I get it. Just say, it just should say, there's a singer. So the artist for the trails, that's just how I found her. I don't think it's really relevant to that we
Get rid of
agreed to hire a singer for the Earth Day concert.
Okay.
Should it say more than that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I think it's, yeah. All right. I guess. Can you, is there a motion to accept these?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as edited from
What's the
March
date?
29th.
Karen, can you scroll up?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just saving our changes here. Okay, the March 20th as edited. And I'll second the motion to approve the minutes of March 29th as edited.
Is there a second?
She just did.
Oh, sorry. Roll call, Karen,
I accept.
Sarah,
Sarah Rossitano in favor.
Freddie Gillespie in favor, passes unanimously. So that takes care of those minutes, and I think that's the end of our agenda. Before we end the meeting, I just want to see if Kevin has, I see Mimi has left, if Kevin had anything else he wanted to say before we end. If I don't hear from him, we can assume he doesn't, but we're happy that he attended our meeting.
That's just great to have him.
And I guess, is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Karen Cvikovich, and I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting at 5:07.
Is there a second?
That motion.
Okay, roll call. Sarah,
Sarah Rossitano in favor.
Karen,
Karen Cvikovich in favor.
Freddie Gillespie in favor. Passes unanimously. We'll be in touch, and I'll be in touch with you about how to review. Karen, if you can send out the master plan implementation.
Yep.
The most recent draft to all of us, and then I will be in touch, Sarah, on how you can comment. Okay.
Great.
That sounds great. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you.